intimidated by Matt. You were not intimidated by Matt Damon, but you were intimidated by Issa Rae. Do you think there was like because you want to like write and direct and have your own like kind of show that was intimidating, whereas Matt Damon's just a movie star?
Well, she's not that ugly, so that had something to do with it. I mean, looking in those big pretty eyes, it's like, can you imagine like looking at somebody for 3 days and all they do is smile and nod and don't really pay any attention, and then going from that to all of their attention with 100 people looking at you, you could hear a pin drop, and it was like, oh my god, and the fear of messing up overcame my fear of being me, and I needed to go through that because after that I got the opportunity to audition for Jamie Foxx, and that was the big test. So I was like, I'm not gonna let what happened to me happen there. Even though it was just an audition, I still had the chance to what they have called a chemistry read, which is when you read with the star of the show. So I knew that it would feel like the whole Issa Rae thing, but I knew that the outcome would be a lot different because, again, I didn't have any friends in from out of town. My preparation was there, and the only thing you can do is kind of mentally picture in your head what it would be like to be face to face with whoever it is. So that's what I did. So by the time I got to Jamie Foxx, it was just like I had an idea. I did a lot of research on it. I did a lot of research because you have to hear their voice, or at least I do. You got to feel what it's like to be around somebody you've never met before. Especially if they if they have their name on a show. Hi, I can change your life. Hi. It's nice to want to be you. I mean, it's nice to meet. I mean, never mind. Can I call you? Oh no.
All right, so let's say you mentioned Issa Rae and like she has a kind of like wow that's the life I want. So you are, let's imagine the Paul Mabon show, the writer, director, star. What does the show look like?
Wow, I have never thought of that. I think right now I'm just focused on becoming a series regular or continuing my movie career. I think that my career has just gone in steps. So what I would have to do is gain a series regular to kind of develop my voice even further. I think that the show would definitely be comedic with some hints of drama. The show Superior Donuts comes to mind. Um, Speechless comes to mind. The black guy that was on Speechless. I forgot his name. He was on 911, Reno 911. What's his name? The black guy. What's his name?
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
And that's the problem. Yeah, but I definitely want to kind of, get a little bit more experience in terms of just being a series regular before I can just start being I guess have my own name on the show. You have to establish yourself somehow. Like, I mean, Little Rail did it. Was he on a TV show before? I don't think Little Rail was on a TV show. He just kind of got his after the movie, right? He was in what was that movie?
You're asking me a lot of questions. Cedric Yarbrough's the other guy.
Cedric Yarbrough. Yeah, Get Out. Yeah, that's what it is. He was in Get Out, and that voice kind of sold, I guess, Fox on, hey, let's get this guy's own show because he was very heavily on the comedy scene, stand up, you know. So yeah, a little more experience. I think this progressive stuff is definitely helping because the more exposure you get, the more directors and casting directors go, oh yeah, that's the guy that does that. We want him on our show, and it's like the auditions get easier because you have a name. Nobody ever teaches you how to be famous. They just say we want a Sergic Yarborough type. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
Yeah. So we're friends. I've known you for some years, and I'm I've watched you, and all of a sudden I turn on TV, there you are. I mean, and I'm always happy to see it. It always fills my heart with a lot of joy. but I'm not exactly the best Paul Mabon historian. What was actually your big break on to get into film and television?
My big break on television. Uh, well, I haven't had that big break yet. I was on a
Medium
couple of.
break.
Say it again.
Okay, break in.
My break in.
Yeah, how'd you get it? What came first? Which one of these things came first? The commercial? Was it Rena?
Well, like I've been at it since 2004 out here. You know, with all the plays I did when I was a kid or in college, it just kind of happened like with non-union commercials and then one-liners. I was on Sam and Cat. I was on Superstore. You know, one episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine turned into four. You know, your resume just kind of builds, and before you know it, you look back and it's like, oh my God, I was in a lot of stuff. And it's always not what you've done. You know, it's what have you done lately. So if you are an actor, you want to have some stuff that's, I know it's hard now, but they're looking for stuff current, like from 2020, or it says what you're working on or what you'll be seen in. You always want to have it look like you have a future, because again, the auditions that I'm doing are getting bigger. You know, they just put you. They're not going to put you in a room with a A-lister, you know, for a chemistry read for a series regular if you don't have at least 2 or 3 guest stars or recurring roles, you know, on your resume. So it for me, it comes in stages. You got to really, for me, I had to really just take steps. It's interesting because it doesn't, like, commercially I'm very successful, and I'm realizing that now, but it took a while. You know, it took not being in the union, trying to find an agent. I went through 1, 2, 3 agents before I was lucky enough to land the agency that I'm with now. So yeah, it's not overnight for me.
Did or did not your visibility as a poet in the city of LA help you out all with that, or was it just pure like hitting the road doing actor stuff?
Well, no, actually, it was definitely an asset because when I was on stage doing poetry, you know, it had a comedic twist to it. They just thought I was a comedian, you know, and a lot of the shows we would share the stage with comedians, and comedians would just say, "Oh, he's a comedian," but in reality, like my dad said, theater is theater, acting is acting, and funny is funny. So a lot of people thought my deaf poetry was stand up because the stage was similar to Def Comedy Jam. So what I realized is that my poetry was an asset because when I would audition, they would see like deaf poetry on my resume and they're like, "Oh, you did deaf poetry? Why don't you do a poem now?" And then I'd be like, "It started with a toothbrush." And then I'd do it and they were like, "Oh my God, he's so funny. He's a great comedian." And it's just like, I would get so mad early in my career, but then it's like, it doesn't matter because funny is funny. You know, they want somebody that is just good, and it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Normally I would have a series more questions, but I'm just so happy to see you and talk to you. And I mean, I remember when we were hanging out at a certain point in time, you were talking about.
I remember East Los. East Los. Remember that day we walked around East Los and rehearsed? That was the day. Remember the thing we made? Your track. I'm indigenous to this country. Indigenous what? Indigenous to the continent. Indigenous what? You still got that?
I have it somewhere. I need to do something with it.
You gotta find that, man. That was brilliant. We did for those who don't know, Matt and I combined forces, and we produced a track for his album of poetry, and with my influence, we kind of told this story of what, Matt?
It was the first poem I ever did. It was the first poem I ever did that people like really took note of, was a poem called "I Remember the Alamo," and it was very, it was very theatrical. It was very dramatic. I mean, I don't know if theater is exactly the right word, but it was very dramatic, and it had the rhythms of a political speech. So it did have its own logic, right? That the poem mimicked, right? And Paul was like, okay, well, we'll get these speech patterns, we'll get this, we'll put music under it, and create a track, like a real track, and it came out great, I'll never forget that.
That was a lot of fun. That was in my first apartment. Remember that little thing? Oh my God, it was like 200 square feet. Oof. 14 years I lived in that apartment, man. 14 years. Oof.
So we're joined on the side by Leon.
Leon Pierce. Wow. Famed director and party thrower whose party I need to go. As soon as this is over, man, you got to invite me to the loft, man. I heard about it. I want to go to the loft. Party with the artists.
So Paul, you really did you took me under your wing, and I've seen you give advice to other people, but you also actually were involved with Get Lit and that. So can you tell us a little bit about the teaching methods that you employ to encourage young poets and help them become better performers, writers, everything?
Well, with Get Lit, my influence was primarily as a mentor, and I used what I knew in terms of workshops and performance to help the kids grow in terms of life skills. That was my biggest asset for the organization, because the passion and the art and the poetry was always there. They just needed to, most of the kids needed to just grow up. And the poetry spoke their adversity, but my job was to be an example to succeed beyond your adversity. In other words, I instilled in them the basics of what it is to be a professional, which is to show up on time, know your lines. We would put on poetry shows all throughout the city of Los Angeles and surrounding areas in high schools, and it was a show. It was called the Blitz Show. So basically, we would have to show these kids, hundreds of kids all over the city, why we were who we said we were, which is the best poetry collective that showcases youth talent in the city. It was a once in a lifetime experience that took me all the way to the White House. So I was very fortunate enough to go all the way to the White House, and it kind of validated me as a teacher in a sense. I never really thought I was a teacher, but I said a lot of no's. The kids were just so used to hearing yeses, and it's like they don't really know you care until you say no. You can do better than that. Get your stuff together and then come back. You never say no as opposed to just no, you can't. It's just when you're ready, you can.
Yeah. So it seems like the Paul Mabon story is full of well, I'm not really, I'm kind of, but I'm not really, but I'm kind of not really, but I'm kind of not really, and then succeeding way beyond everyone else. I mean, you're at the White House, you got on television all three times there was an opportunity to do so. You're a huge success story.
Well, I mean, there's again, you can ask Leon. It's all about perception. I don't put on Facebook or Instagram the stuff that I don't get. That story I told you about Issa Rae. I wish I would have left it up, but I took it down because I was so embarrassed. But I learned later from my agent manager that I probably should have left it up, because it was a teaching moment for not only myself, but it helps other actors as well. Your failures is what you learn from. A lot of people are influenced by the final product, but I auditioned for hundreds of commercials and didn't get the part. I auditioned for hundreds of movies and didn't get the part. TV shows, same thing. Straight to the person that didn't need the money. I auditioned for the Speechless show with Cedric Yarborough. I'm like, well, why would you call me in if you wanted somebody that's been on TV for 20 years? You know what I mean? So it's like, you're never going to hear. Well, that's what I try to do. I try to let you know. Every now and then I'll just kind of do a journal entry online to just kind of let you know what it's like to deal with the journey.
Yeah.
No. Yes. No.
So I'm gonna go with some questions here. Would you go to the White House with Trump in office?
Would I go? Really, Leon? Really? Would I go to the White House? Why would I go to the White House now? Would I go with him with Trump and all? I don't think so. You know, Diamond and Silk just got fired today. Just got fired. So no, I probably wouldn't. You know, it's so unfortunate because you know it just is. You know, it just is. I wish this country could be a little bit more unified. You know, it's like everybody's not going to like you no matter what. Your approval rating is never going to be 100% no matter what. But I just wish this country was a little bit more united, you know, and hopefully it'll get better.
Yeah. From the last one we did before I got cut off, someone asked, what if you met, a young artist, and they have, multiple talents? Would you encourage them to get into acting, poetry, or comedy?
Acting, poetry. Why can't they do all of them? You know, I'm an actor. I do poetry, and my poetry's funny. So again, you got to find your voice. You know, the easiest thing to do is be you, but it's also the hardest thing to do is be you because you have to take your act and then do it in front of other people and say, "Hey, this is what I got." And if you don't believe you got something good, then they'll see it.
Another question was, have you ever heard the Paul Robeson speech at HUAC for Congress?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I guess I should. Yeah, I'm very astute in learning to. But no, I haven't. I probably should. Sorry, Dad.
It's really good. It wasn't my question though. Well, Paul, you joined us here for an hour of your time, taking up an hour of your time. I really, really appreciate it. Can you, is there any advice you have for people who are creative and who are artists, who might feel like kind of extroverted and they kind of feel cooped up right now? Like, how are you staying? How you keep your mind active, and what advice do you have to give?
Well, there are many avenues right now that utilize like what you're doing. You know, there's many like people are doing Zoom poetry readings and interviews and master classes that are on TV. It's the new normal, but there's so much stuff out there now that there's really no excuse to not get involved unless you don't want to. I know way too many artists that are doing things every day of the week to complain about not having an outlet. It's just a matter of good Wi-Fi signal.
Step up your Wi-Fi. One more question we have here. As as quickly as information moves nowadays, with kids having so much more access, do you see any generational, decade, or even 5 years difference in the kids you work with?
Well, yeah. When I used to work with the kids, when I first started at Get Lit, it was all about it was just all about growing up. You know, these are really talented kids, but their behavior overshadowed it because we couldn't get anything done. You know, i.e., coming late, having a bad attitude, things like that. They just had to grow up. And nowadays, it's entitlement. You know, the kids are a lot nicer, but they are less apt to see someone else's point of view. Everything is fight, 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 fight. You know, not necessarily physically, but it's more of a lack of understanding. I hate to sound like that, but it has to be a little bit more empathy in terms of understanding other people's points of view as opposed to just your point of view. You know what I mean? I think we all can get along, but we just have to be tolerant and patient. I think that there's things that I could learn from the youth, and there's things that the youth could learn from older people. We just have to come in the middle and meet, and that's easier said than done. Because you have to want to communicate. I think that the biggest influence is the way we communicate now. You know, my teacher, one of the mentors I had, his name was Willard Draper. He once said, "Everything is communication," and he's right. Everything is communication. Uh, us talking now, the only thing better than us talking now like this is face to face. But as we started from no communication to letters to radio to TV to um, ooh, what was those things in the 90s that you carry on your hip, beepers, to cell phones to text messaging, we're evolving to less face-to-face communication, and we lose something with that, you know. And I think that the youth have embraced the good parts of it, but it also costs human interaction, you know, because we can't learn as much as we can if we don't sit down and talk with somebody, you know. That's what I think. But it's such a new medium now. Like, we still don't know the effects. I'm sure there's lots of doctors being written on the effects of growing up in an Uber, Lyft, um, Airbnb, uh, text message age. You know what I mean? I mean, if you think about it, we're getting in strangers' cars, sleeping in strangers' houses. You know what I mean? It's like you couldn't pay me to stay in somebody else's house and get in their car, you know, but it's okay today.
Yeah. Getting a stranger's car you met on the internet, go to a stranger's house you met on the internet.
On a date with them. I met him online. Yeah, yeah. You know, yeah, everybody's who they say they are online. Yeah, okay. And then you're on Dateline.
So, what advice would you give to people trying to break into the film and television industry?
uh, uh, I'm going to stick with communication. Find out what the best way is to communicate with people. And another mentor, John Wolfe from ABC 24 in Memphis, Tennessee, said follow up is the key to success. You know, you have to follow up. You have to remind people who you are. Find out how they want to communicate, and take advantage of it. If they only like text messages, then you send that person a text message. If you want to say thank you, you don't want your letter to be, you don't want your text message to get lost with the rest of them, you might actually have to buy a stamp. Who knew? You know? So definitely master all forms of communication, because um, when it all boils down to it, you know, for my career, you have to stand face to face with somebody and believe who you are. Because if you don't, you're gonna end up standing in front of Issa Rae in season 4. I had one line.
Um, any plugs or products?
Any plugs of products? Um, Not legally. No, I don't think. No, no, I'm not really selling anything now. I am gonna be in the next movie. It's called. It's called. Okay, the director was the same guy that directed Aquaman. So he directed me in this horror movie called. Ooh, this is bad. I feel like I'm on Insecure again. It was a horror movie coming out. It was supposed to come out in August, and the horror movie is called. I'm gonna look it up on my IMDb right quick. But I'm really excited because it's a huge scene, and I didn't know how big the movie was until we had the movie wrap party. And I was like, "Oh my god, this is big!" But let's see. The movie is called. You never get nervous until people put you on the spot. Thanks a lot, Matt. It's called
Is
coming.
it Aquaman 2?
No, 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 no. The movie's called aha. There it is. It's called Malignant. So it's a horror flick, and I don't know exactly. I didn't know exactly what I was a part of until I just started seeing all the press for it. I was like, oh, this is not a weird independent movie. This is a big deal. You know, it was like Aquaman director, and I was like, oh yeah. Shoot, you know. But they hired me for being me, which is really cool, because it's like the character I played was just an extension of who I am, and it's just like I was contributing to this big, huge production, and I didn't know how big it was. So look for that coming out hopefully in August. And I shot around the Progressive commercials. So if you see these Progressive commercials with the background of this chair, there's a chair. Let me see if you can see it. This chair right here. We actually shot the commercials in our houses. So that was cool. So look for those. They started coming out today actually. So yeah.
Well, Paul, I'm still actually. Oh yeah. Well, Paul, it's been really incredible watching your steady and sustainable progress. Like each level is built upon the next, and it's not a house of cards. It's definitely it's you build upon the next, and I imagine when I talk to you again, I hope to talk to you again before then, but I imagine when we speak in 4 or 5 years from now, you will have achieved even more. So I'm very proud. I'm proud to know you, and I'm proud to watch you do the things you said you were gonna do.
Well, thanks, man. I'm proud of you too. You completely changed your life. You were just a local poet spitting at the what was the name of that Ethiopian place in the industry cafe?
Natural high.
Natural High. And every time I look up, you're in Cuba and you're in Europe, and Oxford's paying you to come spit in England and teach and symposiums. And did you do TED Talks?
I haven't.
Yeah. See, there you go. You're not anything. I mean, no, no. But yeah, I'm
When I
really
do,
proud
I'm
of
gonna
you too.
remember my line.
Huh?
When I do one, I'll remember my lines.
Oh, that's just terrible. Well, I'm really proud of you, and I'm glad to see your success, and I'm glad that if I had a help or a hand in that, um, I hope that I can inspire you, and you can continue to inspire others on their journeys as well.
Thank you, Paul.
All right, is that it?
We're done.